Blink. Somebody hip. What? What's hot? Do do ba beep ba ba bee. Bip 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 boo. Hey, greetings from sunny California. I don't know if we've made the national news. We have rain in California. Stop the presses. I'm not a fan of the rain myself, but at the comic book store that I used to work at in San Diego, California, where I grew up and lived for many, many years, Greg was the original owner. I'm sure I've mentioned this, but I worked at San Diego Comics for I want to say between 15 and 20 years. Not quite 20, but more than 15. And therefore I worked for all three owners. I think I may be the only one. No, I think John would have been all three too, actually. But Greg, bless his heart, not only did he not like when it rained, he would get outright furious. I didn't move here so I could put up with the rain. Greg, it's 20 days out of the year. I think you're going to be okay. I mean, that's the trade-off. My man, I get it. I'm not a fan of the rain. I got to wear more clothing than I am than I'm comfortable doing. It's a big pain in the butt. You're wet all the time. It's gross. But, I mean, come on. I mean, and I will grant you that it does seem excessive this year. A little much. But still in all, it's like, yeah. And in 2 weeks, I'll be sweating so much that I'll be even more wet than I was when it was raining. Gross. Anyway, how are you then? Where's up this week? Exo Manowar #1. This is volume 5 or 6, I want to say. Exo Manowar is a Valiant character. This was my pick for the comic shop this week too, and I must have gone on my Valiant rant at some point in the last 3 years and counting now. Me doing this every goddamn week. Valiant Comics was a company begun in the late 1980s by then, he's still former editor-in-chief. Jim Shooter had been editor-in-chief, somewhat controversial editor-in-chief at the Marvel Comics group for most of the 80s, and then he left. I think the deal was they were trying to sell something else, and it ended up being another comic book company, and Shooter quit Marvel. I don't remember the ins and outs of it, but whatever you want to say about Jim Shooter, though, he was good at coming up with ideas. And Valiant was a pretty good idea. It was another superhero universe that was connected, but they were written and drawn for more of a teenage boy audience, which was at the time the prevalent, by and large, the majority of comic readers, which is probably still the case, but it's certainly not as much as it used to be. And it was pretty popular for a minute, since it was so carefully, designed to be. They also, which was at the time the only thing interesting to me at the time, well, that's not entirely true. Barry Windsor Smith and Archer Armstrong, which I remember enjoying that book. Okay. Blah blah blah. Though, so I've never really been super into Valiant except for within the last few years, but I do know more about them than I realize. Exo Manowar, I believe, was a Jim Shooter creation, and I've read issues of Exo Manowar, so the basic premise, to my recollection, is a warrior in ancient Rome is abducted by aliens, and he becomes king of a planet or something like that, and he has this Manowar armor, which is has led him to be the greatest warrior in the galaxy, and then he returns to Earth 4,000 years later. And he's like, what? So then he's on a collision course with wackiness. That's what it's about. Valiant does not crank them out like they used to. And if they have more than 2 titles a month, I'd be very surprised. It could just be that I don't read any of them, but I mean, I can't remember seeing, they had a Bloodshot series not that long ago because I read it. But this is co-written by Becky Cloonan, of whom I've been a big fan for a while. She was originally like an artist more than anything, and she did a couple. I think it was Channel Zero. She did with Brian Wood. And I want to say there was our demo. Demo was with Brian Wood. I want to say she did Channel Zero too, though I'm not 100%. And she also wrote the final issues of The Punisher that Steve Dillon ever drew. That was a pretty good Punisher run in general, not just because of Dillon, obviously, but yeah, her scripts were really good too, and she wasn't doing any of the art on that. I would be lying if I said that I do not have something of a physical attraction to Becky Cloonan, but I guess you could have figured that one out. So yeah, I don't know what the Unconquered is the subtitle. I'm not sure what the premise of this series is, but I will report back to you next week. Also this week, for Picks of the Week, I got the Milestone 30th Anniversary Special, and I have to remember to take this back with me tomorrow, I guess. Because I won't be back home. You don't need to hear my life story, but if you are in the Van Nuys area this weekend, the great Dennis Cowan is signing at the shop. That's this Saturday from, I want to say, 2 to 4. And he's signing this for free because this came out this week. So if you buy it at the shop, he'll sign it for nothing. But you bring anything else, he's going to want to charge you, which is, it's pretty standard. So, yeah, and this is also pretty self-explanatory. It's been 30 years since Dennis Cowan and Reggie Hudlin and Dwayne McDuffie, gosh. They didn't exactly break with DC Comics, but they were like, look, we're going to do this. And DC was like, yeah, go ahead. That's how I kind of remember it. There is, I think it's still available, a short, like hour-long documentary on Milestone Comics on the home box office. I'm trying to be cute and say the whole name on HBO. At least a few months ago it was. And it was good. My mind's like a sieve these days, so I'm unable to retain anything. This is also a reference to a famous cover of The Flash, the number of which is also eluding me. But the famous cover of 2 Flashes running towards the guy in the foreground here. So 2 different statics, because this is the original Static with his Malcolm X hat, and this is the Static of today. So this will be fun. I'm sure it'll have Hardware in it, who is my favorite. And that was Picks of the Week. And now Picks of last week. Maybe these have been going more quickly because I've come to realize. Excuse me. I've come to realize that I've been repeating myself. Believe it or don't, I actually do watch these. Not immediately. I let them age a little. And then I go back through, and I think I've even said this before, but the main reason I do it is because I have nobody to talk comics with. There are, my boss doesn't really read that many. We could talk comics, but not current ones, really. And my coworker, Abel, they don't read much other than manga and some select, other titles, but I don't really know anyone and even amongst the regulars at the shop, who I talk to about comics. There's this guy Ken who is he works there. He's worked there on Free Comic Book Day with us. He came in last Thursday when I was there by myself, and I don't normally see him because he comes in later in the day. And it was cool shooting the shit with him because we have similar tastes and we're reading the same kind of current comics. So since I don't have someone like that I can talk to on a regular basis like that, I record myself doing it, and then I go back and I go, I like what this guy has to say. Why did I feel the need to explain that? Oh, because I was talking about how much more quickly right before I got up and went and got the tape. Look, the tape on this had broken. It was really driving me nuts. All right, get off my back. Who the hell are you anyway? Okay, last week I read Superman Lost #1. This is exactly what I expected. The great Christopher Priest teamed back up again with Carla Paguilin, or Pagulian. I'm definitely butchering, is a Filipino fellow. But they worked together on the great Deathstroke series that just ended. Well, I guess it's been like 4 years now. But the last time Deathstroke, I think anyway, had his own title, was Christopher Priest was writing. It was really good, and Paguilin is super good. So this is and I'm assuming it's not in continuity, although I can't ever be sure. But in this story, the Justice League are out fighting an alien spaceship of some sort. It has like a drive that's busted, some sort of weird thing where Superman kind of has to throw himself onto a grenade, and he pops back. He shows back up, like he's at home with Lois. He pops out to do this mission. He comes home, and he says he's been gone for 20 years. So that's the story: is that he was lost to him for 2 decades. To everybody else, he popped right back. But yeah, it promises to be good. What more need I say? Hellcat #1 was also great. It was what I expected, but what I had kind of forgotten was that, I mentioned that during Christopher Cantwell's run on Iron Man, he's the writer of this book also. He is the one who brought Tony Stark and Patsy Walker together as a couple, which I don't believe they ever had been before. But he also had dropped in some other stuff over, and I think I even talked about it on here. There was like an issue, I think it was the Iron Man Hellcat Annual, in fact. And the Son of Satan shows up in there, but in a different guise. He's like, oh, okay. There's like a lot of this where kind of catching us up on Patsy Walker. Because like, as I mentioned last week, she started out as kind of an Archie Andrews ripoff, and then became a superhero in the 60s when that became the popular thing. And so Marvel was like, well, fuck, we'll just turn anyone, and everyone we own will be a superhero. Millie the Model, for example. And she's had a weird life, even for a Marvel Comics character. The beginning of this issue, there's already tension between her mother and her rival / best frenemy, Hetty. Hetty Harper. That's Headley. So yeah, both of these are first issues, which is weird. I don't always just use first issues on here. And like I've pointed out, or maybe I'm just hearing oddly enough, it's like an echo chamber in here. Here. I completely lost my train of thought in the middle of the train of thought. Honestly, you think I'd be annoyed by that sort of thing, but it's really freed up my time. I've got a lot of time on my hands now that I don't bother finishing thoughts. Oh, right. It seems to me these days that first issues are no longer first issues. The first volume of a trade paperback, that's the first issue. Because everybody has to read everything at once now. Nobody wants to go through to me, the fun of digging for back issues and having them take up even more space than a nice slim volume does. So the first issues are rarely like, in the old days when a book really needed to start real strong, the first issue was always like oversized or this or that, happened a big thing, and then as into the 90s it'd be like, oh, it's die cast, foil cover, whatever the shit. And now it's like, no, the first 6 issues have to do that now. Okay. But it's still good, don't get me wrong, I'm not wrong with that. This was a little different in that way. This is the Forge #1. This is super fun, first of all. For one thing, I looked up Greg Rucka this time and said it was blah, blah, blah. So his first work was the Atticus Kodiak novels, and I read the second one called Finder, and I don't think I ever read the rest of them. I really ought, because I remember really liking it. And I bought it because he had been writing Gotham Central at the time. and I was waiting for my new speakers to be put in at Best Buy. This was a long time ago. And then Whiteout was his first comic book, which was a action thriller set in Antarctica. And then Queen and Country was his first real big thing that he broke out with, and that became a big hit in the comics world. I want to say, I'm surprised it hasn't been made into a thing. He has had things made into things. Stumptown was him. That show with Kobe Smulders. I haven't watched it yet, although I do like her as Maria Hill. The Old Guard, which was either a show or a movie on Netflix, which I still haven't seen, but that was also him. Yeah. So it's not crazy that he's doing like a full blown sci-fi thing, but it's still not. He hasn't done a ton of it. And this is great. This is very what I like to think of as kind of like heavy metal sci-fi, which is not to say that there's a lot of fucking in it, although there might be later. There's definitely a lot of swearing though. And that's what I mean. Like heavy metal type sci-fi and fantasy to me is adult, and it can mean it's pornographic. I'm certainly not going to turn that away. But what I'm thinking is swearing and stuff. To me, it's like, as much as I love science fiction, and I do, one of the things I even love about it is its kind of corniness. Like, I've been reading a collection of short stories by Jerome Bixby, whose most famous thing is the story "It's a Good Life," which was made into a very famous Twilight Zone, where the kid sends people into the cornfield. So this collection is all stuff from the 50s and 60s, and boy, it's ridiculous. But I like it because of that, I think. Like, these guys are on a rocket and he's smoking a pipe. Oh, that's... that doesn't seem... This doesn't seem like a smart thing to do in a spaceship. I don't know. I'm not a fucking scientist, am I? But that's what I mean. Like, science fiction of that time was very silly because it was being relatable. And so I still enjoy that now. Like, I don't think there's any modern science fiction that I've read lately anyway that shies away from adult situations, but I don't know. This has the same kind of attitude as heavy metal too, where it's like there's going to be swearing and stuff in this, and tough shit if you don't like like it's very punk in that way. I think that is kind of what I mean. Heavy metal, for all it's not the genre of music, mind you, but the magazine, the adult fantasy magazine, and the legacy it's created. Heavy metal is pretty punk. It's not great, it's not good, but neither is punk a lot of the time. But yeah, it's so this is, I would say that, like, if Rucka had pitched this to heavy metal, maybe that's why it is magazine size too, because it has that same kind of vibe. But yeah, it's super fun. What the Forged are this group of soldiers who have these mecha suits, and they're all ladies, they're all tough gals, and they're on a very dangerous mission, which gets more dangerous. That's the plot. Because now I'm getting back close, dangerously, to half-hour territory, and I still have dinner to cook, as I said every week. Finally, this week, this was not a pick of last week, but I read the Last Days of Black Hammer. This was a great PS. Black Hammer, as regular viewers might recall, ended recently, and the ending was, so Black Hammer in this whole, even though the whole franchise is called Black Hammer, it's the Black Hammer universe. Black Hammer himself does not show up at all. Black Hammer is never in the book until this story. His daughter, who becomes Black Hammer, is. And so, definitely the argument can be made that she's the Black Hammer of the title. And I think that's fair. I think I just made that argument with myself. But her father, who was the original Black Hammer, is never in the book. The original setup was our heroes find themselves stuck in this small farm community in the middle of nowhere. They have no recollection of how they got there. But the Black Hammer is missing. Nobody knows what ever happened to him. And so that's like the whole book is where are our heroes and what happened to Black Hammer? And it takes years until we finally find it out. And in that meantime, Jeff Lemire filled in all the rest and made it like a whole connected universe. And then he brought it to a close. I guess I want to say he did it for about 10 years. This was apparently a Substack exclusive. I don't know if you're familiar with it's basically an emailing list. I subscribe to a few and I enjoy a few, but honestly, most of the time it's another email to delete. But they put this out as a Substack only, I guess, to try to get subscribers. And it went right past me. I might have otherwise have subscribed. But honestly, I've never really enjoyed reading comics online. I'll read them on my tablet, but reading them, just like getting a PDF and having to, it's a pain in the butt. But yeah, this was a Substack series originally. And it's the prequel, basically. It's the moments, I guess the title says, it's the last days right up until Black Hammer makes the ultimate sacrifice. And so it's cool. It's a nice PS to, like, because it was like, that is kind of the beauty of it, is that the whole story is about a character that's not really in the story. Because it's not about him. It's about his teammates, and it's about the lengths that superheroes go to for their duty versus their families and all that sort of thing. So just to have, but it's been over for a few months, and you're like, eh. And then like another regular came in and he asked me, he's like, "Is this new?" And I went, is it? I thought it was, honestly, I think at first glance I just thought it was the collected trade of the last stories. And I'm like, no, this is a brand new thing. And then I went, oh, it's a Substack thing. So since he and I had no idea, we immediately, well, he bought the one and I ordered this copy and I read it this week and it was great. Okay. So that's that, and that's that. Goodbye.